Travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, we talked all about cake, Hades, and murder while discussing Duke Wriothesley of Meropide.
This week, we're continuing to blow your minds of how much lore there are in our artifact sets. We're going over Deepwood Memories.
Looking for your clear path through this dense forest? Join our cult. Head on over to talesofteyvat.com for brainwashing pages assigned militantly to each episode we record, curated by our Grandmaster Tiffany.
I'm a Grandmaster.
Mm-hmm.
Our site also includes links to past seasons and special episodes, artist spotlights from the community for every episode, and wallpapers to download.
Finally, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what episode topics you'd like to see in the future. Additionally, feel free to give us a rating on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts to let other travelers know they can find a cool, hip lore spot. Not that we're very hip.
We're hip now.
Wow. I'm pretty sure when you say hip, it means you're not.
When you use the word hip, it means you're not hip.
Saying hip just means that you're going to find your people.
Are we sure
Good
about
point,
We're the
this?
bee's
point.
knees.
We're the bee's knees.
Aw,
Brendan looks at his knees and all of a sudden all of our faces are there smiling at him.
there's bruises. No.
But today we're going to be talking about Deepwood Memories, like Al said, which is the first artifact set that was new in Sumeru.
It goes along with Gilded Dreams, and it's kind of, situated to be the best in slot for most Dendro characters, with Gilded Dreams being a great complement to this artifact set, especially if you're putting it on Electro. When you look at the goblet, it's a lamp, so instantly we think of Nahida because her main weapon is a genie lamp. So it's reminiscent to the vibe of Nahida, and of course, it's generally a great artifact set.
Yeah, I think I have it on all of my Dendro characters.
Yeah, I do too. I know it's on Tignari, and I know it's on Kave and Kale.
I have it on them, Curara. I have a halfsies on Alhaitham. I have the Gilded Dreams and Deepwood. And then I also have it on Baiju.
Yes, it's actually really, really good on Baiju, ironically. He's great when it comes to burgeoning. I don't think in any other case he's been great, but it's probably the only artifact set I would ever recommend people use with him if you're not going a full healer.
Can I ask a question?
No.
All right. Well, never mind.
No, what's your question?
Has anybody used the word burgeon before?
Like a virgin?
Like a burgeon.
I live in Bergen County.
For the very first time.
Oh, goodness.
I always remember the first time I heard the word was when Brandon was trying to get the achievement where you have to do it 3 or 4 times. And he was like, can you guys help me? Blah, 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 blah. And I didn't understand what you were saying.
I forgot about that.
I literally was like, are you saying virgin? He was like, no. I was so confused.
She was like, what the hell is that?
I know. I was like, what game are you playing? This isn't Honkai Impact, Brandon. There's no version.
Well, in case you are actually one, I've never heard the word, never used it. But if for those of you who would like to expand your dictionary outside of Genshin, burgeon or burgeoning means to increase rapidly or expand rapidly.
I expand rapidly when I have pizza.
Oh, wow.
You are burgeoning with pizza.
And tacos. Oh my
And
god.
Al doesn't share her tacos.
Al does not share her.
I will share everything else but tacos.
The amount of times I've been like, Al, share your tacos with me, even though she lives 40 states away.
Oh my god. Do the tacos have her ranch on them? Because
No. So I could have done that, and you know what? A Chipotle ranch probably really doable with how I make my ranch.
ooh.
No, I just load that shit up with like a little bit of sour cream, but mostly like chopped veg and like some spicy sauce.
For travelers who don't know, Al makes her own ranch, and
I do.
And it's incredible.
Northeasterners on the pod were always really upset that we never got to try Al's ranch, and we all went to Florida and finally got to try her ranch. And honestly, that was the main reson we all went to Florida.
I was going
to
to say
try Al's ranch.
Absolutely. It wasn't a wedding or anything.
Nothing was going on down there.
Nothing.
Just ranch. Oh my God.
I will say, I wonder if there's a way for me to legitimately bottle this stuff because it's high quality ranch. It would be expensive to make.
Yeah, I mean, if you can like afford a booth like at a farmer's market, you
Yeah.
can
Oh my
sell the
God.
shit out of that.
Especially because half the people where I live in Jacksonville, Florida, it's a transplant. Everyone here is either from New York or Michigan or Ohio. And no restaurant is like, yeah, no, what is ranch? Like,
What?
the fuck? What?
How is that possible?
I grew up with restaurants having a squeezy bottle of ranch at the table.
What? Okay, I've never grown up that way. That's amazing.
Wait, in Michigan?
Yeah.
What? I thought ranch was like just like a Midwest, like in Southern thing.
So living in the South, I have not really experienced many restaurants with ranch. That has changed a tiny bit. Like when I went to Asheville, no, not at all. I was not able to like get ranch as a
Really?
side for dipping or whatnot.
So when I was in Austin, I didn't think I would get ranch, and I got ranch.
Oh, Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, there's ranch like spilling under the door seals. Like there's just ranch everywhere.
Yeah, I will say it's very different and it really depends on if you're city and it also I'm a stickler when it comes to ranch. I refuse to have Hidden Valley anything that isn't my specific ranch. And I say that because it does not have the tang. I could make a whole podcast
Wait,
on
Al,
ranch.
you don't. If you were to go to Chili's, you wouldn't get their ranch. You'd have to bring your own.
So that would be good quality restaurant ranch.
I think you're giving Chili's a little too much credit.
Yeah.
Well, no,
And I love Chili's.
Chili's, Red Robin's, I think Outback Steakhouse, they all use the same ranch recipe.
She knows the recipe.
Yeah, I have
She's
a
like,
lot of
I have
questions
done my
now."
research. I have a notebook.
I have done a lot of research and I take this very seriously. If I could make a ranch empire, I fucking would.
Well,
Like, I'm so tired of Hidden Valley super thick ranch. I'm like, I want something zany, tangy.
Yeah, it's lemon juice. That's like your secret ingredient, right?
Yeah.
Brandon, don't say the secret
Sorry.
ingredient.
It's not even just lemon juice. My recipe really only calls for like 2 tablespoons of dill. I don't do that. I put in however much I fucking want. I put in
Dill and
so
lemon.
much
Yeah.
dill and lemon.
It's very fresh tasting. It's so good.
That's what ranch is supposed to be.
This has been the Genshin Lore Ranch Podcast.
Well, if anyone in the Jacksonville area is interested in trying Al's Ranch, let us know. She can
At the farmer's market.
She's selling it for $500 a bottle.
But yeah, hit Al up if you're interested in any of that ranch. So we've gone over a little bit about who it's good for, what the artifact set is good for, who you should put it on, but we didn't really talk anything about the location. So the location of this domain is as soon as you cross over from the chasm, you go over the Cinnabar Cliff and boom, there it is. My favorite cliffside brings you to this domain. It's in Gonda Hill. And the description of that domain is bandits from the Sea of Sand lurk within this domain. Use your understanding of the secrets of the elements to defeat them and obtain the precious artifacts stored here. I think it's really funny because this is the first, domain you see. We've never been to the desert. We have no idea what an eremite is. So I'm assuming bandits from the Sea of the Sand are eremites because that's who we fight there.
What's the name of it too?
Oh, this is the Spire of Solitary Enlightenment.
These names, I swear.
There's another description of it, and it says, in ancient times, this was a great and beautiful place, seemingly made to bless the children of humanity. but the arrow of heaven would descend, making mountains out of flat land and burying the ancient capital beneath the hills.
So the Skynail.
Yes! I'm assuming that they're talking about the Skynail that falls into the chasm.
Oh shit, yeah, because it's right there.
Yeah.
I thought we had a whole other Skynail theory for a moment. I got really excited.
I mean, we might. I don't. We might. There are other areas with Skynails. In Sumeru, we have the desert.
I hope we get a Skynail in Natlan.
I mean, we have the Skynail in the chasm. We also have the Skynail in the Sumeru desert that we haven't seen, but we know is there. But also, from what we know of Chenyu Vale, there was a Skynail that hit in Natlan that Chenyu Vale saw. So isn't it possible that they could have seen that one? And they might have even been able to see the one in Inazuma from there, right?
There's definitely a Skynail in every actual region.
I mean, I think there's a Skynail in all of our hearts.
There's one in the archipelago.
Archipelago.
Wait, is there?
No,
I was like, wait, what? I was like, what?
There's no such thing apparently as an archipelago. So
yeah, but still in the archipelago. I mean, Dragonspine has one too.
Archipelago.
It's archipelago. I still can't get over the fact that I lived my almost entire life saying that word wrong and nobody corrected me.
Because no one knows how to say it.
I mean, granted, how many times does archipelago come up? Or archipelago come up?
Often. Every time you talk about Japan. Isn't Manhattan technically one?
But no, when people are talking about Japan, they just say a group of islands.
Well, that's pretty lame of them.
Because no one knows how to say archipelago. See, I almost did it. Archipelago.
You know what? You're right. New York City is an archipelago.
Oh, I know. I use this word all the time. This is in my daily Redicon of language.
The what?
Redicon? Revcon?
Wait, Reddit-con?
Retcon? Is that not a thing?
Yeah, Redcon is a thing. I thought you said Reddit-con.
Oh, no. That's like a convention in my dreams. But I just think it's really interesting that they bring up the Skynails, and it almost suggests to me that the chasm was originally flat land.
Well, yeah. I mean, didn't something crash into it and then lift back up into the sky? That's our theory.
Well, that's our theory, but that was my theory too. But this is suggesting that the Skynail did all that.
Like a meteor, when a meteor hits the earth.
Yeah, I mean, it's saying the arrow of heaven would descend, making mountains out of flat land and burying this ancient capital. I wonder if this Skynail is who kills Cinnamon, and Viagra.
Ugh. Who the hell is Cinnamon?
Well, before we jump into that, maybe we should do a quick refresher because our best friend Viri is going to come back into this and maybe go over a few of the key players in this. Some people we know from when we did our Viridescent episode way back when, and some new characters like Princess Cinnamon. So, if everyone remembers, Viri was a wandering huntsman, basically, who traveled amongst the forests, we assumed, of Mondstadt and Sumeru, but we weren't 100% sure when we did the episode because Sumeru hadn't even been released yet or had just been released. We did not know enough about Sumeru at the time when we started this podcast.
I think just the rainforest was up.
Yeah, because there's another set that references a blind little boy who is part of the Viri story.
And he was Roland's brother, who was the student of Rostam.
Yes. What's something that's really interesting, and I don't think we really did this on purpose, is every artifact set that we've done has basically tied into the previous artifact sets that we've done.
Oh, that's funny.
Viridescent Venerer tied in with Bloodstained Knight, which tied in with the Crimson Witch. I guess that's not really... Is that the artifact set we did, Crimson Witch, or did we just do an episode on Rosalind?
No, we did an episode about her.
What was our other artifact set? We did 3. Right? One for every season?
Wanderer's Troop.
Wanderer's Troop was totally out there.
Yeah, we did 2, like Wanderer's Troop and the other one.
The Sojourners.
Resolution of the Sojourner.
But besides the Wanderer's Troop, which is a totally out there musical-based episode, all the other artifact sets, plus the Rosalind episode, have tied in, which is just so intriguing to me. But Viri wandered around the forests of Sumeru / Mondstadt / maybe even Liyue, and she had been blessed by the Forest King, who is Viagra.
Yeah, our friend Viagra.
Yeah, we call him Viagra.
He was the king of the forest, like blessed her, and she had his powers.
And he's a tiger, right?
Yeah, which we didn't know then. We really just found that out with.
No, I think we did know.
Did we? I didn't remember then.
Yeah,
Yes.
I actually thought that back when we did the Viri episode, we thought it was Rukkhadevata who was the one who blessed her.
I thought we all thought she was blessed by the god.
Yeah.
Because really, that's all we knew at that point was that there was Rukkhadevata and Kusanali. So
I don't even know if we knew about Kusanali yet.
that's true.
But yeah, so she wandered around, and her whole thing was that she slowly lost her mind from erosion, like most people, and that she found this little blind boy in the woods, who we now know is, as Brandon mentioned, is Roland's brother, who is a member of Mondstadt that was trained by Rostam.
And Roland was the Bloodstained Knight, right?
It's never like outright stated, but that is the assumption we have made.
Yes.
That he's the White Knight turned Bloodstained Knight.
And he killed Viri.
Who did kill Viri, even though Viri was literally out for revenge after finding his dead brother.
Yeah, I thought that the blind boy is what turned her.
Yeah, I think she was gradually turned into a monster, just like the Bloodstained Knight, by contaminated blood of all of these demons.
Because Viri was human up until the point that she started killing after the boy. So that it is a turning point, Tiff. You're right. Like, she's a human who really kills mostly for like necessity to start, and then when she finds the blind boy, that's when she has like the evil turn, and she slowly becomes a monster because she's being exposed to all the blood of all these monsters, and she becomes one herself. And that is when, you know, the Bloodstained Knight, who's all about chivalry and saving people, which is ironic, kills Viri, who is really just on a revenge path about his brother. So that's a little quick refresher on Viri.
Yeah, and he kills her because he thinks that she's a monster. Irony.
Yeah, there's a lot of irony in that story, honestly. And it's interesting because it ties back to Rosalind and everything back in Mondstadt, because Roland was trained by Rostam, who is the only survivor of the Cataclysm out of like the main Mondstadt crew that we know of. And his best friend died.
Well, Arundhelen survived, but didn't Arundhelen just sort of like go into retirement?
Arundhelen survived, and did Rostam die?
Yeah, Rostam died. Yeah, that's why Senora went evil.
I can't keep straight which one she was dating. That is my issue.
Yeah, it was Rostam. Yeah, she was in love with Rostam, and when she found out that he was dead, she lost her shit and started fiery.
Yeah, and Arundhelen was Rostam's best friend.
Who gets depressed.
Also lost his shit.
Yeah, he gets very depressed after
So
Rostam
really,
dies.
only one person died in the Cataclysm of note that we know of.
Well, during the big Durin battle, yes.
Yeah, like I said, that we know of too, because like there could be.
You know, Roland eventually died.
Oh yeah. I mean, just during like the fight of the Cataclysm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We only lost Rostam.
Out of that bunch, yeah, because then the only other one was like Egeria.
Oh yeah. We're talking Mondstadt.
Yeah.
A lot of people died during the Cataclysm. A lot of people of note died, including Makoto, Rukkhadevata, Egeria, the Yaksha.
Oh, Bootylicious boy.
Bodacious.
Bodacious, momacious bitch.
Wait, was that during the Cataclysm? Oh yeah, because he disappeared and then came back during the Cataclysm, and he was like crazy.
Yeah, and he fought with Yelan's ancestor to like close the chasm.
Bodacious, not bodacious.
Not bodacious.
I like bodacious better.
Basil from the Narcissus Great.
No, Basil. Anyway. So Viri is a character that does get brought up a little bit during this story, but we also hear about Viagara, or who we may call Viagra during this episode, who is the true tiger of the forest. He is referred to in this artifact set as the Lord of the Forest. We hear a little bit about Rukkhadevata, who is referred to as the King of Trees at one point, which I found very interesting.
Multiple points.
Both King of Trees and Ruler of Trees. And I think that's kind of due to how gods can be so gender fluid, but I think in this case, it's more of like those that are telling the story through the artifacts are more putting a masculine energy to Rukkhadevata.
Okay.
I think it's more on like the artifacts themselves and like who the author is of that, like saying this is the king. And like honestly, there have been many different rulers in our world that were femme presenting but went by king.
Mhm.
So I don't think that's too odd.
So the King of Trees we're thinking is Greater Lord Rukkhadevata. Don't you feel like the King of Trees sounds as a title like lesser than the Lord of the Forest?
No, because Lord, if you're talking to a king, you're going to say like Your Majesty. But if you're talking to a lord, it's my lord, and usually the highest that goes is a duke.
Risley.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, that I'm bringing a little bit of that back, but even with how they describe the Lord of the Forest, because it's just the forest of this one labyrinth of trees.
Versus the King of all trees.
Exactly.
Can we take a moment, because I know about this artifact set and you guys have all confused me so much right now. And it's because I've been confused the whole time, like with the different titles. So I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm just saying maybe we can take a moment just to recap very quickly for everybody who might be in my boat. We have Lord of the Forest, God of the Trees.
King of Trees is Rukkhadevata, and Lord of the Forest is Viagra.
Who's the God of the Woods?
There's no God of the Woods.
There is a God
You
of the
made that
Woods.
up, Tiff.
I don't think I did.
So the God of the Woods is from the Viridescent Venerer set.
Wait, really?
I think that's how they express it, but that in turn would be Viagra, Vigara, as Lord of the Forest instead of God of the Forest or the God of the Woods, because we know the King of Trees is Rukkhadevata in this situation. I think a lot of that is due to two different narrators, because the Viridescent Venerer set would only you know how the game Telephone it kind of fucks with it. I would put this in that light of like Telephone.
So in Viridescent Venerer, in the timepiece, they refer to a god of the woods who died in that disaster. So God of the Woods would refer to Rukkhadevata.
We have forest, woods, trees, and jungle. Because, right, Viagra got jungle as well, or no? Did I make that one up?
Are you thinking the Jungle Book?
You know, I've never actually seen the Jungle Book.
Like, I interpret that as Viagra sort of becoming all the tigers, but I don't know.
They're descended of him.
Yeah, or they're at least made in his image.
Okay.
Like he's like the god of tigers in a way. But that's just me.
The Rishboland tiger, which is the enemy that you find in the jungles of Sumeru, is referred to as the king of the jungle.
Okay.
So it's just the random tiger.
I made them more than they are for tigers. They suck.
I mean, you didn't make them more than they are. That's their title. That's in their description. You just tried to tie them into the story.
Yeah, like I thought they were going to be more important, or I thought somebody else was this.
So should we go through each artifact?
Well, are there any other key players that we want to lay out first? I know we will talk a little bit about the Aranara, so everyone is, if anyone needs an Aranara refresher. But I think those are most of the key players who come up.
Yeah, there's more that we'll get into when we get Time of Insight and the Lamp of the Lost.
Ooh, all right. Well, let's go with our first piece then. Our first piece is our flower, the Labyrinth Wayfarer. The Labyrinth Wayfarer's short description says, this lovely gold-plated flower was plucked from the crown of the ruler of the forest. And this is where we learn of the birth of Viagara, who we talked a little bit about in Viri's episode and a little bit just now, also known as Viagra. They're the true Tiger King. And long story short on them, we find out through this artifact piece that they were born after the creation of the Varuna contraption. For those who need a refresher on the Varuna contraption, that is a device created by Rukkhadevata to help control the weather once she turned the once sandy forest into a forest.
You mean the sandy desert into a forest?
The once sandy desert into the lush forest we have today. And she used that basically to make it rain, but not money. No Rain on Me by Gaga, unfortunately. And it's something along the lines of the moon's reflection on the new water created the image of a labyrinth.
Did you watch Lady Gaga's concert on HBO Max?
No.
It's very good. And I'm not a Gaga fan, but I was very impressed.
I watched her one documentary, but I haven't watched the concert.
Oh, it's way better than the documentary. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. But yeah, something along the lines basically of the moon reflected onto the water and it created a labyrinth. And this labyrinth gave birth to a divine beast. And that divine beast was a tiger, aka Viagara.
Rawr.
Rawr. Which is interesting. We find out that Viagara had these stripes on them that were constantly changing and appeared to be blazing, and which is just a lot. There's a lot.
I wish we got to see that.
Well, I feel like you can see that because if you finish the Pariland story quest, and for people who don't know what Pariland is, because I have all these ridiculous nicknames for everything, if you go to the last desert extension in the Givira Lajavard, there's a beast that comes out called the Concentrated Fanged Beast, and it's like a green tiger. And I really that was the first thing that came to mind.
Oh, I forgot about that dude.
Oh no, I hate that guy. He's so hard to fight. I remember fighting him for the first time and screaming in my head. And that's tattooed on my brain. But they have the tiger is over there. There's only one of them. You can't find it anywhere else. And it's said to be a predator that's mutated after feeding from greater life forms, which is a lot. There's a lot to take in there. It talks a little bit about, survival of the fittest. And it says the price of coveting the gift of the strongest is much more painful than being locked in a cage. So they basically throw shade at Nahida, as per usual.
Aw, poor Nahida.
I know, it's rude.
But yeah, that was just my thought when first hearing about the birth of Viagara.
Yeah, that's a good connection. But I imagine he was iridescent. Everywhere he walked, he was just a very, I don't know, almost like a disco ball of a tiger.
There's different sort of accounts as to Viagra's creation, because some accounts are Viagra was there and then someone else showed up. Other accounts are this other person created Viagra, and that person, of course, is Cinnamon.
Fucking Cinnamon.
Who the fuck is Cinnamon?
I have my theory, and it's a crack theory, but it's very...
First of all, listen, I know that there are people that don't like us being less than wholesome, but I'm just going to say it. Cinnamon, that's a stripper name.
Oh, it's totally a stripper name.
Yes.
100%. We had a thing at work once where we were just what did you want your name to be as a child? And my one coworker at the time said Cinnamon, and we all looked at her and we're like, what did you think your job was going to be when you grew up?
It's I was going to be a Spice Girl, Tim.
When I was researching this and I saw Cinnamon, I just come with me for a moment. So let's jump aboard the Astral Express.
No, Tiff just jumped.
You lost me.
No, you're fine. We're going to an alternate universe version of Teyvat. It's called Teybad.
Teybad.
And the four of us are a wandering troupe, but we're not basic like the Wanderers troupe, because we sing, we dance, and we strip. And so in my little fantasy world, Amanda's real name is Cindy, and she goes by Cinnamon. Tiff's real name is Anne, and she goes by Coriander. My real name is Megan, and I go by Nutmeg. And Al's real name is Al, but she goes by Cloves. And when people ask her why, she says, because I like to take my cloves off. And, our troupe name is the Spice Girl.
That is a way to do it.
Oh my God.
Do we just, get up in all this nation centers and just start going, if you want to be my lover?
Yes, but we also do TLC numbers because they're just too good.
Don't
Creep and Red Light Special.
Chasing hilly trolls.
Also my burst is I slam the pole down and I twirl around it and my extensions just slap everyone in the face.
I want it to be my tassels that float around and create a whirlwind catalyst.
The titty tassels?
The titty tassel.
Before we jump too far into Cinnamon and we come back from the Spice
Sorry.
Girl multiverse, which I love. I love this AU. So don't get me wrong. I just want to bring us back quickly to the Flower, the Labyrinth Wayfarer. So The other thing we learned from this artifact set is basically that when Viagara was born, however it was, and Brandon, you mentioned that it really depends on who's telling the story. And it
Yeah.
seems from here we either get a human story or an Aranara story.
Yes.
And it's like, who do you want to trust? Because we know the Aranara don't have good memories, but we also know that they put their memories into plants and then like talk to the plants to get their memories back. It's a weird thing, but that's what they do. So when Viagara is born, Rukkhadevata gives them a crown, and eventually Viagara gives this crown to Cinnamon. And Cinnamon, we learn during this artifact set, is a person who would actually take like lost kids in, and she would train them to be able to like fight and survive in the forest while also being able to respect everything in the forest.
Yeah.
And only one of them survived.
And this is sort of when I started thinking that like the forest way of life is a cult.
I mean, it's basically saying that the forest rangers and forest watchers are cults. So Tignari isn't a cult.
Maybe, yeah.
I joined that cult.
But well, I mean, at least up until Viri, like I do think Viri joined a cult. I think there's other people that we'll get into that joined a cult, but it makes sense. I mean, the rainforest popping up in the middle of a desert is like a magical thing, right?
Yeah.
And we were told that this was created by Rukkhadevata, but this artifact set is sort of making us question that a little bit. Like, was it created by Rukkhadevata? Was it created by Cinnamon? Was it just always there? Because I think Cinnamon is sort of alluded to be older than Rukkhadevata.
Interesting. I did not get that at all. So that's really interesting.
What did you get?
For me, after reading these artifact sets, after reading the artifact set, I thought Rukkhadevata totally created the rainforest, and Cinnamon just happened to get lost and find her way to Viagara.
So that's the human version, right? Like someone from the cult, like that's the story that they were told, like from Viri's cult. Like that's the version that's passed down to the humans that are forest queens. Meanwhile, the Aranara think that she left her palace with Viagra.
Oh, they made like Viagra and Cinnamon were like in a king and queen type of deal.
So the human version is like Viagra was there and was like the Lord of the Forest, and this brave human girl marched up to Viagra and was just like, I'm not scared of you. And Viagra was like amused by this and sort of took her under his wing or his paw and taught her the ways of the forest. And then she in turn taught all the other children that would wander into the forest, like these lost children that would wander into the forest, which would eventually trickle down to Viri, of course, how to like be, of the forest. Meanwhile, the Aranara are more like fairy tale. They're like, there was this princess who left her palace with Viagra. So it's more like of a magical thing.
Yeah, which would make sense for them. And they are just very based in that. And I also tell you that every time you say Lord of the Forest, I hear King of the Forest and I see the Cowardly Lion in Wizard of Oz when he sings his little song before it goes into like I completely hear it. And I also would like to know if Feeny tried very hard to find if Cinnamon was actually Cinnabar.
I mean, I definitely think it's related.
I thought about it too.
They're
Yeah.
completely different.
That's why she's Cindy in my alt universe.
Oh, that's so good.
But also, and we find this out a little later, Cinnamon isn't Cinnamon's real name. We don't actually know Cinnamon's real name.
Which why did they start calling her Cinnamon? I'm so confused.
So let's just finish going through the basics of the
sorry.
artifact set. So that's one. So the next artifact we have, which is the plume, which is Scholar of Vines. It says it's an emerald leaf as fluffy as a feather. I don't like that description. Plucked from the raiment of a forest scholar. And this is when it talks a little bit about a young girl who can understand beasts, read poetry by moonlight, guarding the forest.
Which is Cinnamon.
And basically saying that Cinnamon taught people like, hey, as long as you follow the laws of nature, you'll be good. You don't have to fear dying. Like, Rukkhadevata is going to keep us well. But they said that she guarded the forest during the times of the ominous moon, which is suggested to be the cataclysm. And that this is when the blind kid followed their brother and the kid died and Viri sought revenge. So it does bring in the Viridescent Venerer storyline.
Don't you think that this sort of alludes to her maybe being a Seelie? Because I think it was in the first artifact, the Labyrinth Wayfarer, that they say in the end, all she had left to herself was her true name, a handful of water that reflected the moonlight. So there's this theme of the moonlight and, the moon, which we know Seelies are associated with the moon. So when they say that she was a royal servant, is that like more evidence that she could have been a Seelie? Like, and I'm thinking like a divine envoy of the forest, because I'm assuming they all had different areas they were in charge of. But maybe she was more powerful than that, because maybe, and we can get more into this, but the lore kind of says that she dreamed up the forest. So that's in the King's Squire weapon description.
That who dreamed up the forest?
Rukkhadevata?
Cinnamon.
Yes.
Okay.
And the King's Squire weapon talk about once upon a time there was a child who lost her way in the forest. Following the footprints left by the forest king, she stepped into the tiger's garden. But then there's this quote that says, "Remember, this whole world is but a dream of the forest. One day you shall awake from your reality and find your place in this boundless hunting ground where our prey had blah, blah, blah." It's in Labyrinth Wayfarer. So it says she and many fragments of dreams would at last flow into the dreams of human scions, like how a shattered mirror reflects many different images. The dreams she left behind are circulated through the narratives of the people in a myriad of forms. Those tales that became the widest spread, aka emerged victorious, had nothing at all to do with her. So this is like super, sorry, Tiff, this is very Honkai Impact 3rd. Project Stigma sounding to me. Like there's like a dream network, fragments of dreams that would at last flow into the dreams of human scions. Like it almost sounds like she's a god that was able to create the forest and then pass the idea of the forest down in such a way that it created the forest for humans. Does that make sense?
To me, it makes sense.
Yes.
Like it's very Project Stigma in Honkai Impact 3rd, which is like a whole dream network where you have these ideas that are sort of like in an iCloud situation that influence Earth. And like when she says scions, human scions, I mean, a scion is that usually describes an heir.
It also describes a branch. It's a type of branch.
Oh, interesting. So my question is like, are Cinnamon's dreams the fates of people in Teyvat? Like, is it that big, or is she just like in charge of like creating the forest through dreams?
See, I read this differently. I read it as Rukkhadevata created the forest, and then the tiger taught Cinnamon how to walk through dreams and change the forest and protect the forest and use those methods to pass down to like what we now know as the forest rangers.
I did not interpret the dreams as like literal dreams. I think it's more of a philosophy that they were teaching. At some point we do get into like literal when the Aranara come around, but I think this is prior to them. They're not specifically doing that. I think this is more of like to do with Irminsul, just because of how we know Irminsul works.
Which, like the dream of the forest, it sounds like Irminsul, right?
Dream of the forest, and this could be, you could say dream of the forest, or like what Rukkhadevata, Vigara, and Cinnamon would have dreamed for the forest to be kind of this like very naturalistic city, being one and in harmony with the forest and with nature, rather than conquering it. And that dream is then passed down through their teachings, and that therefore the memory is branched off into human scions.
Oh, that's interesting.
Could Cinnamon's dream of the forest, could that have made its way into Irminsul, which is how Rukkhadevata used that to create the forest?
No.
You're suggesting that this is similar to the tree in Inazuma, how the tree was planted now, basically, by Makoto and A and everything, but Istarov made it seem like it's been there for 500 years. So you're suggesting that...
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
No, I'm thinking that Cinnamon is either a god or a very trusted Seelie that influenced the creation of the human realm. And her dream of the forest somehow became the forest, even though, I think it's pretty clear that Rukkhadevata created the forest, or at least the lore tells us that. But was she able to create a forest in the desert because of Cinnamon, because of something Cinnamon did? Did she add something to Irminsul that Rukkhadevata was able to pull from? And also, like, what do dreams have to do with it? Like, I know we talk about timey-wimey bullshit, like that's a Doctor Who reference, but we really need to start talking about dreamy-weemy bullshit in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because we don't really have a direct answer even after going through all the artifacts in the set. And I wonder if they're doing that on purpose. And I do wonder if something is missing now in Irminsul.
This is why I just think Cinnamon's like a stripper.
The stripper god?
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you think it's maybe possible that Cinnamon removed something from Irminsul to give to Rukkhadevata, and now Irminsul has forgotten it, and that's why like the Aranara wouldn't know the truth either, because we're getting some info from the Aranara, who were also created at the time of the forest. So if anyone was going to know, you'd think it'd be them.
Well, they were created, from Irminsul by Rukkhadevata. So how do they even know about Cinnamon?
But they don't. That's the thing. Because every time one of the Aranara dies, their memories go with them into Irminsul. I mean, because so
no, the Aranara definitely know about Cinnamon. That is proven in this artifact set.
They have their own like origin story. So,
but they don't know her.
But they know her and their story, and they trust it because they're probably reading it from plants that their brethren have left their memories in.
Or from Irminsul.
Right, because if you think about it too, like the Aranara know our sibling. Now, are these the Aranara that hung out with our siblings 500 years ago, or are these Aranara that have read the memories of the Aranara that hung with us?
Well, I think there was only one Aranara that's still around that met our sibling, right?
I don't remember. I did not.
I think there's like a veteran Aranara that was like, I was there. But I don't know. I could be misremembering. But my point is like maybe Cinnamon somehow helped create the forest, even if it was just the ideal of a forest, like or not the ideal, but the idea of a forest. And Rukkhadevata drew on that via Irminsul, which created the Aranara, which now have a story about Cinnamon. I'm just like, Cinnamon is like a whole thing that I need to know more about.
Again, before we jump too far into Cinnamon, let's try to go through the rest of the artifacts, because I think the other artifacts give us some more tips.
Confusion. Yeah.
It just gives some more like info that can be seen as helpful or not helpful. But I will say Cinnamon is mentioned in other places outside of this artifact set and outside of TCG, even though she is on 2 TCG cards, which I find interesting as well. But okay, we've done the Labyrinth Wayfarer. We just talked a little bit about Scholar of Vines. The next piece we have is the Sands piece, which is called A Time of Insight. The short description for it is such timepieces are used by those who dedicate themselves to the way of the wise. These timepieces do not contain lifeless sand, but instead play host to tiny mustard seeds.
Isn't there like a mythological thing about mustard seeds? Like, don't they sort of represent death or the spirit world or something?
Like IRL?
It usually refers to faith.
Oh, okay.
Faith and growth and dependence, but it's mainly seen in the Bible as like a symbol of faith.
Yeah, it's seen as something that can cause big change by having faith. If you have faith in Jesus, he will give you big changes, basically.
Interesting. Okay.
But in this timepiece, this is when it talks a little bit about how, according to legends, quote unquote, Viagara wouldn't die. He would just become one with the forest when he died. So like physically he'd be gone, but metaphysically he'd be there. He's chilling in the dirt that we walk on every day. And they talk a lot about how memories return to the land and that people have to spread these memories. And it talks a little bit about Saman Farrukhzad. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Saman is the daughter of Aga Farrokh, who was an academia sage. And Saman goes on to be the leader of a group called the Farrokhzadan, which is actually an emirate group that works hand in hand with the Fatui. And this is the group that tries to capture the Aranara, who are working with the worst man in all of Teyvat, Dottore, and that we meet with Alphonse in Vimara Village, which is really interesting because in the Rana storyline that starts the Aranara Odyssey, Rana and Sudaba, let me double check that I'm pronouncing that name right, both mention Princess Cinnamon and or Viagara. So I thought that was an interesting callback to some lore we find in the game. But yeah, we learn a little bit about this group, and it says, people years later, people like Saman forgot to do their work, which was returning the memories to the land, which is what they agreed to do. And this is when people, and they say, like the expelled scholar, who is Dottore, start to try capturing dreams, which, means they have to capture Aranara. Yeah. And that's how they're going to remember the friends that they've forgotten.
And I think it was Lunja, Simon's friend, was sort of for hire and worked for the Fatui to kidnap the Aranara.
Mm-hmm. And another one of the friends is actually Khayyam, and he's that guy who lives over in the Mushroom Forest, and that we can talk to a little bit when you finish everything with the Aranara.
Doesn't this feel so random? Because these characters are not brought up in any other piece of this artifact set.
It did feel random.
Yeah.
That's what this artifact set is full of, such curious lore.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's dropping lore about the Fatui, it's dropping lore about Dottore, it's dropping lore about one of the sages and their family line, dropping some Aranara lore. In the next piece, we're going to talk a little bit about Deshret.
It's dropping Cindy lore.
Ton of Cindy lore, Rukkhadevata. We talk about a lion, or a tiger. It's crazy. But yeah, that's basically that with that piece. The next piece is the goblet, which is called the Lamp of the Lost. Short description: this was originally an oil lamp in the style of the Desert Realm, but has since sprouted fluorescent green leaves. This is where they mention a character called the Lord of Folly, who is supposed to be King Deshret. And it says, when Deshret died, there were many types of people who tried to take over, and they all failed.
Well, this lamp belonged to one of the major players in our Remnants of Gurabad episode, which is Faramars. And he's the one that plotted with his stepmom, Makaira, to kill his father, Badana, by luring him into an unstable tower. And then he later killed his stepmom / lover, Makaira, with viper venom, and was eventually exiled to the rainforest. And when he was in the rainforest, he joined the quote-unquote dream, aka cult.
That's it with the Lamp of the Lost. It's pretty straightforward. So the next piece, and actually the last artifact set piece that we have for this, is the Laurel Coronet. The short description for this piece is the crown that was bestowed by the deity with dominion over plants and trees. It was an heirloom of the royal house of the Labyrinth, and it was at last made the inheritance of the king's attendant. So basically saying Rukkhadevata made this crown, gave it to Viagra, who then gave it to Cinnamon.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to keep it. Everybody's giving that shit away.
It's kind of like, when you have that family heirloom it's like that statue that no one wants. And usually the statue's a little problematic. But the story is that great grandmama carved it out of a tooth. It's said to bring good luck. And you're like, but this looks really wrong. I feel like I could get sued for having this in my house. That's how I feel about this crown.
I was going to compare it to the Ragnander vase.
But that's wanted secretly.
Secretly, yeah.
Kaya replaced a vase. Kaya broke a real vase and replaced it with a goof vase that Diluc didn't want, but proudly displays as soon as you walk into the winery. So
true. For something you didn't want, he sure does keep it right front and center.
Diluc, even if you were going to pretend that you didn't like it, put it in your bedroom.
Yeah.
Put it in the bathroom.
I feel like the lore for this crown helps sort of solidify the idea that Cinnamon was just someone that started following Viagra.
Yeah, I agree.
So she probably was just a human, but we don't know for sure.
You know what I would really like to know? I know we want to know more about Cinnamon, but I'd really like to know who Cinnamon's ancestors are.
Yeah, where the hell she came from?
No, I'm sorry, not ancestors, but who descends from Cinnamon.
Oh, okay.
Who in the game are we gonna find out is the great grandchild of Cinnamon?
Viri.
No.
I think Viri is her. I don't think Cinnamon lived long enough to be able to, have produce a line, if that makes sense.
Well, I don't know.
Maybe it's Jet.
Maybe it is.
Doesn't Cinnamon, her TCG card, doesn't it have like a desert thing?
Well, there are 2 TCG guards the Cinnamon is on, and one she has like the covering over her face that you would assume is for, walking through the sands.
Uh-huh.
But she does have one where she does not wear that as well.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really weird that she's on 2 TCG cards.
With a wardrobe change.
Yeah, I mean, it's barely a wardrobe change. And honestly, it could be representative of a forest goer who has to go to the desert for some reason too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure a lot of people in Sumeru who trek back and forth probably have like different outfits like that. Not that we'd ever see them.
Is that the only difference between the two is the veil?
So the one with the veil, which is the Deepwood Memories TCG card, she has the piece over her face. She has an extra bracelet on her one arm, like an upper arm bracelet. I don't really know what that's called. She's wearing the crown and she's wearing the feather, so the plume, and the background is much fancier. It's gold with green accents. She also is on the card for the laurel coronet, which is her in the crown, but she is just wearing a simple green dress and the background is very simple. Yeah, so it could just be representative, that in Deepwood Memories, she looks fancier because it represents a whole artifact set where the other card represents just the coronet.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the theory that she was like a Seelie or a god who helped create the forest, but I also love the theory that she was just like Viagra's like co-cult leader, and Viagra was just some man that would wear stripes. So everyone was like, he's the tiger of the jungle.
Like the pimp.
And she was like, let me lead you children into righteousness. Like she created the cult.
Oh, some David Koresh motherfucker.
I just wanted to throw out there because we are about to talk more about Cinnamon, because now it's like almost open game for it. Just to finish out with the circlet, it just talks a little bit about why Rukkhadevata created the Varuna contraption. Just that's it. She realized she needed rain to control everything and to keep the forest alive, and she created that.
Yeah, and the labyrinth was sort of reflecting in the water, and that's what was allegedly used to create Viagra.
But but this piece is talking about the Varuna contraption.
Yeah, which made the rain, and the rain created water for the first time, and the labyrinth, quote unquote, was reflecting in the water of that rain, and that's what allegedly created Viagra, according to legend.
Which is fun because it brings you back into your flower wayfarer piece, which is like the moonlit reflected and born a king.
Yeah.
All right, so Cinnamon. We got a lot of open game about Cinnamon now. I know she's like the main question here. We know that Cinnamon is the OG forest ranger. So there's also a question of like, could she have possibly been a Volukashuna? Could that be like a Tinyari descendant, possibly? Those people who we know were shunned out of Tulitula and ran away. They did some of them maybe run to the forest, and that would make sense why Cinnamon got lost on her own, and boom. This is just how I retract it back to one of my favorite characters though. So but we do know that she's like basically the OG forest ranger, that she taught them all the ways of the land, taught them how to respect the land. She was known as a squire. We have no idea what her true name is, and she's actually mentioned by Sudaba during the initial start of the Aranara quest. I don't know if you guys remember, but like we save one of the children and then we go back to Vimara village, and you could talk to all 3 of them and they all want to hear like different stories. And the girl says that she wants to hear a story about a distinguished woman. And so when you go to tell her a story about a distinguished woman, she says, I want to hear a story about a distinguished woman like Princess Cinnamon. So she definitely sees her as a princess. And she also says that a distinguished woman, in her opinion, is someone that is brave and like sticks to their guns and, has like common decency and ethics.
And works that pole.
This is also, just so you guys remember, the same character that wants to marry Rana. This is that little girl who's like, and one day I'm gonna marry Rana.
Oh, little baby lesbian.
Yes, who loves Princess Cinnamon and wants to marry Rana because she also wants to be just like Rana. So she's like, well, if I marry her, I will be Rana. Rana also clearly shows us that she knows the teaching of Cinnamon and that they are still with the Forest Rangers to this day. She's quoted saying, our teachings in Sumeru also say to respect nature and the forest because we are the forest subjects and so are the birds and the beast. And in that same little while later, we're trying to like light a fire, and she tells us that there's this thing they do in the Forest Rangers where like the most distinguished one of them all should light the fire. So she's like, y'all should light the fire. And we ask her like, why do you guys have the tradition? And she says, probably because in the era of darkness, fire was a symbol of warmth and courage. And Paimon's like, what the heck's the era of darkness? Because Paimon hasn't heard anything that could sound like the times after the cataclysm. And so Rana's kind of like, oh, right, maybe you don't know this shit. And she's like, the origins of forest rangers go way back. The earliest rangers were the Forest King's royal guards. So they were the royal guards of Viagara, aka Viagra. And Rana says, I heard that they once walked in forests where there were real tigers. Later, when Conria fell, and thus began the era of darkness, not many documents have survived from then, so no one really knows what exactly happened. And then she says that she wants to see a real tiger, but like they're everywhere. So I don't know.
Ooh.
Rana might not be like the most trustworthy narrator. Like she's never seen a tiger. She's a forest ranger.
But what if those aren't like, tigers? Like,
oh, like they don't consider them real tigers?
Right.
Oh, that would be. So is that green tiger the real tiger?
Maybe.
I think the real tiger is a man dressed in stripes who starts a cult.
So Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
Yes,
Say
the
it one more
Beetlejuice
time.
It's been on TV all fucking weekend. Like every time I go into like the living room, my dad has Beetlejuice on. And even today he was like, every channel is Beetlejuice.
You saw that there's a part 2 coming out, right?
Yeah, and I told him that's probably why it's on TV right now.
Yeah.
I was like, they just announced they just posted like all the character posters. So I was
Wait,
like,
so Cinnamon is Winona Ryder.
Stop it.
We solved it. We did it.
We did it. We could end the pod.
Yeah,
No.
we're good.
And, while we're talking about Cinnamon, I love the idea that Cinnamon was possibly a Seelie. I love the fact that she could have been some sort of god that we don't know about. I honestly had hoped that originally she might be the goddess of flowers, but the timeline doesn't really fit in.
Well, didn't it say that she suffered from erosion? Like, isn't that a god thing?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Erosion is typically a god thing. So it's definitely possible, but it's also possible that Viagara blessed her to have more godlike powers, because we know that Viri was blessed by either Cinnamon or Viagara. Originally we said Viagara, and I honestly think it was actually Cinnamon at this point. And that's why Viri was stronger and lived longer and blah, blah, blah. And you were talking about the King Squire Bow piece earlier, Brandon, and they say in that while some people went on to continue protecting the forest after listening to Cinnamon, others, when they gazed upon the great agony others suffered, decided to bid farewell to the hunting ground and become hunters who would terrify even the most vicious beasts. And they're referring to Viri.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think Viri and Cinnamon can be the same person, because they also say that Viri was the only real survivor of Cinnamon's followers, like of the people that she trained and taught.
So you think Cinnamon might have still been alive when Viri entered the forest cult?
I definitely think so. Yeah. I mean, we know that Viri walked around during the cataclysm times. We don't know if it was like 10 days after the cataclysm or a year after the cataclysm.
No, I'm questioning like Cinnamon being alive that long.
I think it's possible. We don't really know when exactly Deshret died either. We know when Deshret lost his mind, the forest had already been created. So how long ago did the goddess of flowers sacrifice herself, which put the wedge between Deshret and Rukh and led Rukkhadevata out to the now forest?
So Zhongli is 6,000 years old, and he's just now starting to suffer from erosion, right? Like in a significant way. So if Cinnamon passed away from erosion, which I guess we don't know that for sure, but wouldn't that mean that she's older than 6,000 years?
Or it can mean she was a human that was just given a baby bit of power from a god.
Exactly. Yeah. She could have like had a different span of erosion.
But Ajdaha had erosion as well, too, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what they referred to it with him.
Yeah. That's why he starts to forget everyone.
Yeah.
And that's why like they're like, fuck, we have to lock you back up.
But we don't know like a time, like an age for him. We just know that Zhongli heard him underground, right? And brought him up.
Yeah, he was like, what the heck?
So there's no way to know like if he was older than Zhongli or whatnot. So really what I'm saying doesn't add anything.
Well, he's considered a dragon, right? Isn't there some kind of blurb where it's like, Teyvat has dragons, including, and they mention Azaha?
Yeah. He's considered the Geo Dragon.
We don't know if he was like one of the 7 dragons, but he does like pop up and then he makes friends with Zhongli and then something happens and they end up fighting.
Yeah. And I think when we did our Ajdaha episode, we did say that we don't think he's an original dragon king or anything like that. Like he's not the original Geo dragon. So he's probably like, he's not the oldest being in the world.
Yeah. Well, it's unconfirmed, but that's our theory.
Right, because Newbie's not the original. He's a replacement.
He's only 500 years old.
Oh, that's true. He's a youngin.
He is probably the baby of the dragons, but so far he seems the most mature, but that might because the others are eroded. It's like, when your like grandpa gets really old and he starts saying things like out in public and you're like, Grandpa, you can't say that.
Yeah. And it's because also a pep wants to eat you.
Well, I stay as far away from a pep as I can. So, I mean, I can't risk being killed just yet.
Well, I stay as close to Nouvelette as I can.
Yeah. Do you think Nouvelette would protect me against a pep despite the contract?
Of course he would.
Zhongli wouldn't. He'd be like, you signed a contract.
No, Zhongli would be like, there's a contract. Sorry, bitch.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I didn't sign the contract, Zhongli. There has to be some law that makes this bad.
And this is why Nouvelette needs to win in the eventual smackdown that happens when Nouvelette fights Zhongli.
Oh, yeah. I mean, with the side eye.
I can't.
I mean, they do have to fight, right? At some point. I mean,
Yes.
Nouvelette wants to fight everyone. Like, he's really ready to fight every Archon out there.
Well, everyone, you mean all 7 Archons, 7 people?
Well, he's mad at them. He's like, you guys let this happen to Farina. This is all your fault.
Well, also, like, you committed genocide against my kind, so yeah, I'm mad.
I really don't think Nouvelette cares about that, though. I don't think he cares because he knows they weren't there when the dragons got killed. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't there. He knows that Zhongli and Venti and none of them were there when the dragons were overthrown by the primordial one.
True, but they are like upholding like the power of the dragons. Like they are like taking that power and like using it.
I don't think Nouvelette is mad at the Archons because of what the primordial one did. I think he's mad at the Archons because of how they treated his daughter.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense, actually.
And that they didn't tell him.
I mean, all the Archons, they very much wanted to help. I think they just didn't know how.
I don't think they knew. I think word spread after.
You don't think they knew that the primordial one slaughtered the dragons?
Oh, well, I don't know about that. That's 50-50. I mean, I don't think the Archons knew that Farina was a fake god.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I also think they're slightly self-absorbed too.
I mean, especially A.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, she don't care what's happening outside of her.
A
shores.
locked herself into her titty sword for 500 years. Like,
And even now, she's got too much that she's got to do to make it up for her own people to care about other people's people.
yeah.
I heard during my research, and just to put it out there, just because I read and watched some videos on people who thought that Cinnamon's name was Laurel, because there was some reference that made it sound like that her name was the name of that artifact. So there was an assumption that the name was Laurel. And I was like, that just sounds like a troll. But I read it in 2 places, and I don't necessarily think it's right. I just want to put it out there it's another theory.
I mean, those people must be playing in Teyvat instead of Teybad.
Yeah.
Because Cinnamon's name is Cindy.
I
Cindy.
mean, mean, it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
And a laurel is like the vine things, right? That you see on like certificate stamps.
Yeah.
So it's like a leaf.
Yeah, it would be like a leaf and vine kind of deal.
So I kind of started saying this earlier and then I shut up, but I had really hoped before looking at the timeline that Cinnamon could have been the goddess of flowers, but knowing that the goddess of flowers had sacrificed herself to try to save the world from forbidden knowledge led to the forest even being created. I was like, oh man, maybe that's not possible. But what if Cinnamon is a smaller god? You know, it's like the smaller version of the goddess of flowers.
That's completely possible. We've got,
Like a Paimon, you know, like a Nihida.
Yeah, like a dendro god.
I will say it's probably more likely that when we look to like Leeway and that Sumeru borders that it could possibly be more along the lines of a Yaksha or an Adeptus.
Oh, like a lesser god.
I just thought that she could have been the goddess of flowers mini-me because of the name Laurel, like keeping in the floral category. But I think the fact that we don't know her name is so interesting because they kind of make it seem like Cinnamon didn't want her name to be known. Like that she purposely was like, no, people beyond my years won't get to know my name.
She doesn't want to get stalked by her clients.
But everyone's dead.
That's the subtitle to this game.
She still has to work. She is still out there working that pole. Like
True. Somewhere. I liked I forget who said it, that the idea that she might be Makaira.
I mean, that's possible. And I think that might have been me.
That might have been.
It might have been me because I wrote it down on my notes because I was going back and forth. And we do know that Cinnamon does kill Prince Faramar's.
Mars' dad. First of all, I like the idea that Makaira could be like
Cinnamon.
Well, it could be a djinn.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe Cinnamon is like the queen of the genie.
Which kind of would make a little more sense because djinn can, they can change, they can shift their appearance. To me, that doesn't seem too far out.
Like, that would be a really interesting sort of arc for her is, I'm like this goddess of the desert and I create these desert spirits, but I fell in love with this idea of the forest.
Ooh, fell in love with the idea of the forest. Well, I fell in love with the idea of Genshin giving us more Cinnamon lore. And hopefully we'll see in the next few updates some more information about her. We did just get some more Sumeru desert information, which was great. And when they released the Sino V2 story quest, but definitely nothing about Cinnamon in there. Not that I know of, unless she founded the Temple of Silence. And I don't think that happened. But I think that's all the time we have for today because we have to check our mail.
Mail time.
Mail.
So Kirara brought us a few messages today, so we're going to hop right into it. Our first message comes from Serena, and Serena said, "Hey guys, I love your podcast. The last episode, which was the Sun Children of Enkanomiya that I listened to, was really good. And I was wondering if you guys could do one on Hutao next."
Well.
Well, that might be coming up.
Then Serena posed a question. Who do you think talks the most in Genshin besides Paimon?
Zhongli. Off the bat, Zhongli. And, give it another region, it's going to be Nuvalet. These old men like to talk. They're very chatty.
I really was trying to figure out who I felt like just was like a chatty Kathy and just talked it up all the time. Like you couldn't get a word in edgewise. And every time I kept thinking about it, I thought about Charlotte, but it can't be her because she hasn't been there that long, I guess. But I feel like she talks in double speed. So
the reporter speed.
Yeah, I feel like she could definitely be, after a while, she's going to get up there.
I mean, the answer is within the message. It's Hutao.
Yeah.
I mean, with all those words, she fit into her fast rhymes.
Yeah, she talks so fast. I mean, besides the rap, even beyond the rap, she just talks really fast and a lot.
I want to say I would between two. I'm between Ito because every time Ito talks, he has to say his 18 titles. So I mean, Ito could be in like one update, but just from saying his title, he's talked like 10 words. And my second one is going to be Sino. And it's just because Sino has had so many events that he is one of the main people in. And he's had 2 story quests. And he was one of the main characters in the Archon quest. He was a character in Alhatham's quest. He was a character in both of his quests. I just think we've seen a lot of him. And I'm gonna say a third.
Beanie does not know what the meaning of choose one.
No. My third, it's one of these 3 is Wanderer. And I only say that because Wanderer has been around since patch 1 and has been a main character in a lot of shit as well.
But I was thinking not like in a technical way. I just mean like in terms of like who they are as characters.
Oh, Ito. Ito. So that's the key. That bitch is like Arataki. I mean, look at the name of his last event.
Yeah.
what was it? Like the Arataki numero uno, fantastic, Phantasma, Fantasia, Beetle Battle Boxing, like beatbox.
And he shares a birthday with Paimon. Like they are twinsies to a degree.
That's true. I love that they have the same birthday. It's so cute. Well, thank you, Serena.
Thank you, Serena.
Thank you. Our next message comes from Icarus. They said, I have a question. I've seen the image of Totore burning Irminsul floating around with speculations about Natlon. So if you remember the burning Irminsul that we saw in that like initial Sumeru trailer that we've yet to see, IRL.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what would happen if Irminsul was destroyed. Lore-wise, it's responsible for the ley lines, which I would think means domains, waypoints, statues of the seven, and ley line blossoms, including bosses, would stop functioning. And since it's connected to the minds of everyone in Teyvat, would it kill everyone? I feel like it would. And that's not me. That was Icarus.
I'm not going to go into it because it's going to piss off Tiff.
Oh, no.
Honkai!
Freaking Honkai.
Say it, Brandon.
I just feel like it's tied to the imaginary tree, and if Irminsul burned, it would sever the world from the imaginary tree again, because I think it has been before. And they're either barely attached to the imaginary tree or they have already been severed, and Irminsul is like sort of like the remnants of the imaginary tree within to that. So I do think that the world would sort of die if it was burned, or it would fall off of the imaginary tree and then also probably die. So yeah, I do think everyone would die.
I'm going to go next because I just had to suffer the Honkai theory. And I think that it would be the zombie apocalypse, and it would be like Walking Dead, and all the outliers or anybody who's not actually from Teyvat would just totally, like, they would be the ones living and they would be attacked by all these zombies with no brains, because we saw what happened when Wanderer or Scaramouche was removed from Irminsul. So we know that like people just forget this stuff when it's taken out. So if the whole thing was taken out, I think all their brains would just fizzle up, but there's no reason for their bodies to die. So I think they would become zombies.
It's very similar to the very beginning of Honkai Impact 3.
Oh my God.
I mean, I can understand like the idea of like people go poof, but I think a lot of it would just be people would wake up and have no idea what's going on, because Irminsul is connected in a lot of ways to the world, but I think the idea of reincarnation would end. And so the memories that we see like with the Aranara and all this stuff connected with memories would just cease to exist. Everything would kind of just start over, and we wouldn't be able to like go back. There would be no domains, no waypoints. Everything would just be kind of like IRL. You can't go back.
Wait, maybe that's sort of the end game. Like,
yo,
what if that is the Loom of Fate project, is like getting rid of Irminsul because Irminsul is creating the fates?
Oh, well, shit. All right, everybody mark that down in this episode.
let's do it.
Well, my theory, I'm not going to change it despite what Brandon just said. But I kind of feel that if Irminsul were to be burned and everyone didn't die, I feel like it would have to release all these memories that it is kept hidden. Like, if Irminsul isn't there as like a plug, keeping some of these secrets like Scaramouche from leaking out into people's minds, would all of those things come back? Like, have these items truly been quote unquote removed from the Irminsul computer, or have they just been put into the hidden folder? So if they're in the hidden folder, I feel like everyone's going to get this huge brain headache when all of these secrets that have been kept from them are revealed. I mean, Nahida would find out the truth about Rukkhadevata.
But what if it just all goes into the recycle bin?
Well, do you empty your recycle bin?
Yes.
Sometimes.
I think it,
I mean, you should.
I empty that shit every day.
yeah, but like, I mean, most people don't. I do too, because I do so much, like, obviously graphics and audio work on the computer. Like, I don't need that space to be taken up. But I think for like the normal person, they don't do that. And I don't know who runs the Irminsul computer.
It's Kiana.
Fucking
Well, you know, Kiana
Well,
is the
yay.
one creating the moon.
It's
the
actually
moon reflections.
Autoapocalypse.
All right, I think we're done.
What if it's my boy Dan Hung? He's a dragon. What if he's
too
Nibelung?
uninvolved?
Whoa, he's taking a mental health break, Brandon.
He's like reluctantly doing anything in this whole
Because
game.
he's depressed right now. He has a lot of trauma to unfold. I'm so proud of him for taking time to figure out his trauma. March 7th is going to drag his ass out of that archives room. Don't you worry.
I believe that, actually. So yeah, I agree with you, actually.
Or Aventurine and Dr. Ratio are just going to come and save the world when Irminsul burns. So
with
it's
their
fine.
bitchiness, there's a sass off that just like creates a whole other universe.
They just sassed Dottore and convinced him to not burn Irminsul. Dottore is like, I don't want to be a threesome in this. I'm leaving.
Sounds like an insult. You're such a sass off.
They're so sassy. It's so good.
I laughed.
They
my
are
sass
so
off.
in love. But that being said, thank you, Icarus, for your question. I do think that's all the time we have all together today.
Thank you, Icarus.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming down and listening to us talk about the Deepwood Memories artifact set and how it connects to the Viridescent Venerer and Rosalind and all this other crazy stuff like the Aranara. Next week, we're going to be talking about another man with 3 titles. We're going to be chatting about Rex Lapis, Morax, Zhongli. Until then, safe journeys, travelers. We'll see you next time.
Bye, Spice Girls.
If you want to be my lover,
You gotta get with my friend.